When it comes to payday, it's hard to know what to do with your money. You get paid, and before you know it, your bank account is at zero again. If you're new here, welcome to Master Wealth. On this channel, we focus on helping you get to your money goals through simple videos that explain what can be at times complex topics. And in this video, I want to walk you through the 8 things you need to do as soon as you get paid. Step 1. The very first thing you want to do is know your reference point. That is step number 1. There is something called the ostrich effect, which is a cognitive bias that causes people to avoid any information that can make them feel sort of discomfort. They would rather act like that information didn't exist. This is maybe why you'd rather not check your bank account after a big night out or avoid facing your debt. But this idea of just burying your head in the sand when it comes to your finances is a big part of why 64% of the US population lives paycheck to paycheck. The solution isn't as hard as what people make it out to be. Calculate exactly what you spend on housing, groceries, transportation, insurance, and other essential living expenses over the next month, as well as any other costs that make up your essential living expenses. Next, you want to figure out how much of that makes up your total net income. You can do this by using your own method. Just think about all of your expenses, both necessary and unnecessary. List those down and start to cut out certain things that you don't need. The guideline is to keep that overall expense number, both necessary and unnecessary, below 60% of your net income. Again, if it's over, go through each of the items and think about whether you can reduce it. Maybe if you're living in a 2-bedroom apartment, you can rent out your spare room or swap it for a cheaper alternative. Maybe you don't actually need 50 GB of data on your phone contract. Knowing your reference point helps you immediately move on to step 2. Step 2. The Quick Solution Fund. Being good with money involves 2 things. First is understanding the basics, the basic math part. Second is often overlooked. It's the psychological aspect. Sometimes, even if the numbers suggest one choice, the best choice might actually be the one that makes you feel comfortable. This idea is important both for this step and for step 7. Imagine the psychological comfort of knowing that even your car breaks down, if your boiler fails, or if you need urgent health care, it will all be taken care of. You don't have to go into a debt to pay for these emergencies. That is the benefit of a solution fund. The psychological comfort and the peace of mind just for having this fund tucked away somewhere and knowing you can get access to it. That's hard to quantify. The aim is to take the total of your 1-month living expenses that you calculated in step 1 and save them in a solution fund. Save it in a place where you can get high interest and it's easy to access. When you get to 1 month of expenses, you can pause there. It isn't necessary to build up a fully fledged 3 to 6 month emergency fund at this point. Instead, we are now going to focus on the most mathematical sensible approach, which will lead us directly onto step 3. Step 3. What's better than buying something now and not having to pay for it months or years down the line? The answer is not overpaying for it. Let me explain. In the US, the average credit card debt per person is just over $5,700. We use debt to buy everything from clothes to gifts to furniture. If you're not paying it off, you're overpaying. If you pay for an iPhone with your credit card, which has a 22% interest rate, then that $1,000 iPhone isn't costing you $1,000 anymore. After a year, it would have cost you $1,220. That is $220 more than what you should have paid. So, if you have high interest debt, instead of keeping it and taking any savings you have and separately work on building a savings fund, what you want to do instead is cancel them out. Use your savings to pay off your debt. You might be thinking, how does that make sense? Everywhere you hear, it's about saving, and I'm telling you to use your savings to pay off your debt. Well, debt usually costs more than savings earn. If you have $1,000 sitting in your savings account earning 5% a year, after 1 year, you would have made $1,050. Essentially, you're $170 worse off than if you had used that money to pay off your high-interest debt instead. So, what's the best way to approach this? Step 1. List out all the debt that you have that has an interest rate of above 7 or 8%. Step 2. Decide how you're going to pay it off, whether you're going to use the snowball or the avalanche method. The snowball is the psychological optimal route. Simply put, it means paying off the smallest of your loans as quickly as possible. And once that debt is paid, you take the money that was used for that payment onto the next smallest debt. The idea of this is that once you see that you're able to pay off a loan and you have that under your belt, you have the motivation to keep going. But there are times where the additional time and the additional money investment of the strategy doesn't make sense. And that's when the avalanche method comes in. Instead, this focuses on paying off the loan with the highest interest rate first. Once the highest interest debt is paid, you put that money towards the account with the next highest interest rate, and then the next one, and so on until you're done. Step 3. Use your savings to focus on that debt in the order of which you chose. A little side note here, depending on how much you're saving and where you're located, the interest through your savings can also be taxed. That makes the benefit of using extra savings to continue and stay at this step, rather than saving it even more justified. Now, you have a little more freedom to do what you want. But first, let's move on to Step 4. Step 4. This has come in lower on our list than you would see on other personal finance channels. And the reason for that is that it essentially involves sacrificing your current disposable income for a future pay increase. In my opinion, there is no point in planning for your financial future if your present finances aren't even in order. So, only once the last step is complete, then you should focus on employer-matched retirement contributions. In most countries, you have to opt into this plan and call your HR department to get you enrolled. In places like the UK, by default, you're automatically enrolled into your workplace pension scheme. 10% of people choose to opt out. If you're from the UK and are in that 10%, I'm hoping that your main goal in opting out is to do one of the steps above. If it isn't, then you can focus on this step until you've maximized all the benefits. It's worth making use of this for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's free money from your employer that typically matches your contributions up to a certain percentage of your net income. For example, if you contribute 5% of your net income, your employer will match that 5%. You can continue this until you've received the full match. You don't need to go any further at this point. The second reason why this is a great option is that it reduces your taxable income this year. And this isn't something that you can backdate. You can't use your last year's allowance this year. So, if you don't use it up, if you don't use that employer matching contribution this year, you've lost it. While taking this step in, you should also begin saving 3 to 6 months worth of your essential living costs. That same amount that you calculated in Step 1. And you do this to build out an emergency fund. This fund is a bigger safety net for you to fall back on for those bigger, unexpected, but inevitable life shocks. If you lose your job, you don't want to be worrying about how you're going to pay your bills or being forced to take on the first available job that comes at you just so you can make ends meet. In most cases, you will be fined for 3 months of your living costs, purely your living costs. But if you're in a higher risk industry with a lot of layoffs, or if you're self-employed with an unsteady income, then 6 to 9 months is even better. Step 5. Your ROI. People have different views on how they should allocate their money between Step 6 and Step 7. Our view is that the easiest way to make more money is through getting a pay rise or starting a side hustle. And to do this, you need to invest in your own return, in your skill set, in your knowledge, in the extra value that you can bring. The extra money that you can bring on the side or through a pay rise can then be invested into the next steps in the order that I discussed. The reason why we've done it in this order is because if you focus on Step 7 or Step 8 first, that journey to wealth becomes more prolonged. The best solution, if you can afford to do it, is to choose to do them alongside each other. If you have enough money to do them both alongside each other, then that's the option you want to go, because by starting early with investing, you're on the right side of the curve when it comes to compounding, and the exponential growth you can have when time is on your side is life-changing. So, the first thing to do is make sure you're fully utilizing any tax-free accounts that are available to you. For instance, a Roth IRA if you're in the US, or if in the UK, there are different types of ISAs. Step 6. The opportunity cost. When it comes to investing additional income, there is always an opportunity cost in how you decide to allocate that money and what you could have done with that money instead. But really, it comes down to what you want to prioritize and how you want to carve out your life. At this point, some people might think that the best option is to fully pay down their mortgage and live in their house completely debt-free without any stress. This means they have the freedom to go part-time or start a side hustle or business that they've always wanted to. It can mean they could travel for an extended period of time without worrying about mortgage payments. Or it might mean fully paying off your student loan so you can take some rest and choose a different career path. Others might find it a better option to continue investing in things like private equity, peer-to-peer lending, and also making use of taxable investment accounts. What do you do here? There's no right or wrong when it comes to this step. It's about using the additional income you have in a way that fits your risk appetite, your income category, and the vision that you have for your life. That's how we allocate my money on payday. If you found this video useful, I would love for you to subscribe. Over 70% of people who watch my channel have not subscribed, and it would mean the world to me. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, financial freedom starts with an adaptable mindset. See you in the next video. Cheers!